Our top story at this hour, Eskom has reported a net loss of 12.3 billion rand for the year ending 31st of March 2022. The power utility says the financial loss is largely due to high finance costs and the use of open-cycle gas turbines to supplement generation capacity. Eskom has reduced its gross debt from 401 billion rand to 396 billion rand. Outgoing CEO Ruyter says the parastatal's high debt remains unstable.
Our net loss after tax, while still unacceptably large at 12.3 billion, is a 51% improvement compared to the prior year. Sales volumes were moderately up after a recovery in demand following the COVID pandemic. And then we saw the balance sheet continue to show some improvement. But as you can see there, we spent approximately 70 billion rand on both repayment of debt as well as interest paid.
All right, so Eskom Group Chief Executive Ruyter announced Eskom's annual results for the year ending March 2022. Eskom's generation performance has deteriorated for the last several years, affecting revenue and cash flow, whilst a resolution of its debt burden is yet to be concluded. Now, perhaps to join in on this discussion and unpack further, we're joined by Sampson Mamphweli, the Director for Renewable and Sustainable Energy Studies at the Stellenbosch University. A very good afternoon to you, Sampson. Thank you for joining us here on the SABC.
Good afternoon to you and the viewers.
Perhaps we can look at some of the key features that emerged, as of March 2022. Obviously, on the backdrop of a long delay, it seems that the results are now finally out. Walk us through the picture that has been painted.
So it's basically a company in distress. Eskom basically couldn't keep afloat if it was not for the bailout from government, and not a net loss of 12.5 billion rands. I expected something like this. It's much better than the previous financial year. It's actually 50% better, more than 50% better than the previous financial year. But any loss cannot be celebrated, basically. The issues, we still have main issues which are around the municipalities that are owing Eskom. If you look at the 12 something billion rand that Eskom has posted as a loss, they couldn't collect within this current financial year about 7.7 billion rand from municipalities. So that money is also part of it's also recorded as part of the losses. They went back also to look at what they call the restatements, which is basically correction of some of the previous financial year's statements, dating way back, and that also led to some of the issues that they've reported today. The biggest issue still remains the cost of generation and the loss of generation capacity from the coal fleet, because every time we lose generation capacity from the coal fleet due to these breakdowns, Eskom has to now rely on open cycle gas turbines, and then they burn a lot of diesel, and diesel is quite expensive. So that is impacting on their financial statement quite heavily. So those are some of the biggest issues. The low quality of coal that is applied to some of these power stations. From the technical point of view, we know that those boilers are designed with particular coal qualities, and once that such quality deteriorates, then it affects the way the boilers operate. It affects so many things, from your efficiency to breakdowns, basically. So those are some of the challenges that we have. The aging coal fleet needs to be fixed. And that's one of the things, the main things that is causing Eskom to operate in this particular manner. But this is a company in distress, in my view. Government needs to come in on board and try and assist, mainly because if you look at the debt from the municipalities, it has risen by about 27% to 56 billion rand. That's not sustainable for a company like Eskom. The historical debt that they carried from way back, it's also impacting negatively on their financial outlook, because then whatever money that they generate goes into servicing of that debt. The delays in the breaking up of Eskom into 3 generation business units, that is also impacting heavily, because some of these issues, most of the issues are in generation. And if the 3 business units become independent companies, then those problems that are in generation can then be isolated and be dealt with, and they may not necessarily impact on transmission and distribution. So that process needs to be fast-tracked as well.
So, Prof, besides the necessary upgrades on transmission and distribution, also the issue of leadership also comes to the fore. I think before we get to that, though, I want you to perhaps speak to the security measures that Eskom has also had to have implemented amid an increase in conductor theft, vandalism incidences. I mean, last Sunday we also heard from President Cyril Ramaphosa that the army, in fact, had been deployed to very strategic sites.
Yes, so I've known about this for quite some time, because I've spoken to some of the forensic investigators. Eskom had to bring in their own forensic investigation team, and including private forensic investigators, to investigate some of these issues that have been affecting the power stations, because up to 30% of the causes of load shedding it comes from things such as sabotage, things such as corruption and things like that. So while Eskom is fighting the technical aspects of things, those are exacerbated by some of unfortunately, some of the people who are within the Eskom system and the people outside who are in business. And the CEO indicated this afternoon when he said that some of the people in business are also involved in the corruption that's taking place at Eskom. And for instance, you will find that people damage infrastructure, knowing that they will have to supply the particular parts, or they will have to come in to assist the original equipment manufacturers in terms of maintenance of those particular parts that they have damaged, which is commercial sabotage. And those kind of things are things that are really putting us in a dire situation when it comes to load shedding. The deployment of the military by the president is something that is welcome. At this point in time, Eskom needs any help that they can get. The military themselves, they may not be able to deal with technical issues. People may fiddle with the Eskom systems, various systems, with the military being in place, because the military does not necessarily know some of these things. But the military has got capacity, apart over and above looking after the infrastructure in terms of security. They also have capacity in terms of engineers and electrical engineers in this sense, who can also assist Eskom in terms of maintenance of some of these systems. They may need to go through some form of training, because most of them have never worked in power stations as well. So in terms of security measures, it's unfortunate that the state security machinery is not necessarily being able at this particular point to assist Eskom to deal with some of these challenges that we have.
Prof, just very quickly, there have been calls for a state of disaster to be declared on Eskom. And I'm only bringing this into the equation, perhaps, as we look at the issue of leadership at the SOE to date. We do understand that Andre de Ruyter is set to leave the utility in March of 2023. And what has been the impact of leadership, perhaps also from year two, as we look at the long-term strategy and trajectory of the SOE at this point?
So in terms of leadership, Eskom it's a mixed feeling as well, because nobody wants to work at Eskom at this point in time. Many people are leaving Eskom. The CEO is leaving. That creates a vacuum. It creates uncertainty. We still don't know who the board will find to occupy that position. The COO will soon be leaving. The CFO may still soon be leaving. That creates uncertainty at the highest level. If you look at the Eskom management for the past since 1994 or so, or 1996, we've had more than 14 about 14 CEOs of Eskom, and they come and go, and the problem remains. And the problem is not necessarily leadership. The problem is mainly on the generation, on the coal fleet that has been giving problems, and that came out very clearly in the financial statements that Eskom released today. Eskom has got a new board. There's a new strategy. There's a new, that they are working on. The president has announced a new plan. There's no need for us to declare it a national crisis or anything of that sort. What needs to happen is that government needs to capitalize the new strategy. So basically, government needs to make a bold decision and give Eskom between 10 and 15 billion rand, and ask them to renew these power stations. It's like your car with an engine that keeps giving problems. You break it apart and then you put it back with new parts. That's basically what needs to happen with the coal fleet.
Prof, you know, there's so many more questions than answers at this point on the back of these results, but I think a lot of people want to know whether, you know, the lights are going to be on or off during the festive season, and for how long. But we'll leave the conversation there for now. Professor Sampson Mamphweli, Director for Renewable and Sustainable Energy Studies at the University of Stellenbosch, weighing in on the back of Eskom's annual results for the year ending March 2022.